about the global race for AI, the story usually sounds the same, right? It's all about who can spend the most and build the biggest models. But what if there's another way to play the game? Today, we're digging into India's AI blueprint, a strategy that isn't just a little different, it's a direct challenge to that whole bigger is better way of thinking. And that really begs the question, doesn't it? When the rules of the game are basically set by a handful of giants with what seems like unlimited money and power, how do you even get in the race, let alone compete? You see, the established playbook is pretty clear. It's all about going big. We're talking about developing these massive foundational models that just eat up capital, compute power, and data. It's an incredibly expensive, resource-hungry approach, and right now, it's the one everyone is following. But what happens when that playbook just doesn't work for you? Well, India is basically writing its own, one that's built from the ground up, based on its own unique situation. So let's break down what that actually looks like. And first, just to set the stage for why this is so important right now, AI isn't some far-off future idea, it is happening. Just look at these numbers. In 2022, about half of organizations were using AI. By 2025, that's expected to jump to nearly 90%. This isn't a slow crawl, it's an absolute rocket launch. Okay, so with that speed in mind, we hit India's big reality check. And this really gets to the heart of why just copy-pasting the Western model is, well, it's just not going to work. And here is the fundamental mismatch. On one side, you've got the hyperscale model, which runs on just massive amounts of cash and energy. And on the other side, you have India's reality. Capital is limited, resources are scarce, but labor is plentiful. It's like they're playing two completely different games. This resource gap becomes crystal clear when you just look at where the data centers are. I mean, look at this. A whopping 73% are packed into high-income countries. India? Just 3%. The imbalance in the actual physical hardware that powers AI it's absolutely staggering. So this reality forces Indian policymakers to face some incredibly tough choices. It's not simple, and it all really boils down to 6 critical trade-offs they have to navigate. Okay, the first big trade-off is this: frontier versus application. Do you pour your limited resources into chasing the newest, most powerful, cutting-edge models? Or do you focus on building practical, specific AI systems that solve real problems for people in your country right now? Next up is the classic tug-of-war between scale and inclusion. Sure, rolling out AI super fast could give the economy a huge productivity boost. But here's the catch. In a country with a massive workforce, you risk displacing millions of people way faster than the economy can possibly retrain them or create new jobs. Then you have the choice between going open versus proprietary. Do you embrace open source technology, which is transparent and lets everyone build on it? Or do you become dependent on these closed-off, black box systems that are totally controlled by just a few companies overseas? And we can't ignore the sheer resource cost of that dominant model. This quote just puts it into perspective in a mind-blowing way. A single AI data center can burn through the same amount of energy it takes to launch a rocket every single day. For a nation trying to be smart with its resources, that's just not sustainable. And of course, there is that classic policy tightrope walk: regulation versus innovation. How do you encourage people to experiment and build new things, especially when you don't have a ton of resources, without also creating huge risks or losing public trust? And finally, there's a huge geopolitical balancing act. Let's call it strategic autonomy versus global integration. You have to protect your critical sectors, like finance and defense, from being too dependent on foreign AI. But at the same time, you absolutely cannot afford to cut yourself off from all the innovation happening around the world. It's a very, very fine line to walk. So after all those challenges and tough trade-offs, you're probably wondering, okay, so what's the plan? Well, this brings us to India's answer: a bottom-up strategy, a really pragmatic way forward. Now, a huge piece of the strategy is betting big on open source. And you know what? The data's showing that's a really smart bet. The performance of these open source models is catching up to the big, expensive proprietary ones incredibly fast. This proves a really important point. You don't actually need to build the most expensive thing to be competitive. So what does this frugal AI, as some call it, look like in the real world? Well, here's an amazing example from healthcare. Using AI with simple thermal imaging cameras for early-stage breast cancer screening in places that just don't have access to expensive medical machines. It's smart, it's efficient, and it literally saves lives. And it's not just in healthcare. Let's look at agriculture.
AI-powered networks are already helping 1.8 million farmers get better prices for their crops and access bigger markets. See, this isn't about some abstract quest for superintelligence. It's about applying AI to fix a real, tangible problem for millions of people.
The exact same idea applies to public safety. In the Himalayan region, you've got machine learning models hooked up to local sensor networks to give people real-time landslide alerts. It's a perfect example of that bottom-up approach, building a specific solution for a critical local need.
But all this amazing tech is only half the story. The entire strategy really depends on the human element, on building a workforce and helping people adapt their skills for this completely new era.
The whole conversation around AI and jobs gets pretty wild, right? We hear these predictions about mass unemployment. But the reality, as this quote kind of nails, it's probably going to be more subtle. It's not one big shock to the system, but more of a quiet, steady drift that we need to prepare for. And this data from the US kind of shows us what that drift actually looks like. In the parts of the economy most exposed to AI, the link between the economy growing and new jobs being created has gotten a little bit weaker. In simple terms, it means you can have economic growth without the same level of job creation we used to see. And that is the quiet shift we need to get ahead of. So the answer has to be a total rethink of how we approach education and skills. We're talking about things like earn and learn programs that blend work and school. It means we stop focusing on just memorizing facts and instead prioritize skills like problem solving and adaptability. And it means putting a real focus on those high-skill, human-touch jobs in fields like nursing and elder care that AI can help but probably can't ever truly replace.
So when you put it all together, what you see is a strategy that's not built on chasing hype. It's built on reality. It's focused on smart, targeted AI, on empowering its people with the right skills, and on building from the ground up. And that leaves us with a really big final question. Is this pragmatic approach just a path for India? Or could it actually be a more sustainable blueprint for an AI future for everyone else?